really big problem.
I'm
And
recording.
then you can, great. And then you can see, I don't know, that was me offsetting. And then you can see there are a series of dead ends where the street network has in fact been disconnected over time, which is a really, really, really big problem. So what we'll do is one by one, let's have a look. So the first option, and I'll move those underneath for this purpose to begin with. The first option takes through the existing car park, which is a structure, but it might snip off the back piece, of which you guys can decide, are they courtyard gardens which enter into each of the lobbies? Is there actually mixed use and retail at the back? But what it does let you do is to put a laneway frontage which connects all of these dead ends to the end, and it in fact then lets you widen and add additional park. So what you've got is additional public elements. You've got a new frontage. You could look at courtyards. They'd be south facing, quite lush.
And your pink piano keys are not meant to be straight, correct?
No, that's correct. So you get different proportion courtyards and angles, and people get longer views out of the courtyards. They're called piano keys. So in this instance, if we were to, just on this layer, take this, there's only a certain number of pieces. What I'm going to do with you now is I'll check that it's meters as well, not millimeters. I'm pretty sure it's in meters. Yes. What I've just done is I've extruded the car park. And now in 3D, what you can see is there's a level of car park. I'm going to move them up each. I think there's 4 levels of car park here. There's 4 levels of car park of a volume, and then you can see the new reserves for park and street. So the new ownership of a laneway, which will be gifted to council, a street widening, and then new elements of park that then you need to integrate in. Then you have this piece within the private lot that we've snipped off part of the back, but then that's up to you for grabs, for you. What we were going to do then is look at if you added some extra structure through and whittled some new structure through the car park, then you may be able to get some housing and roof courtyards on top. So I'm going to do the same again. I'm just going to move them up 12. And what you'll see now is we start to grow these on top. And so what I will do is all of the 4s. I can do this in 3D for you. So what we'll do is you get a range of heights and a bit of playfulness.
Beautiful. Ben, tell us what the yellow is again.
New street or lane. So it's on the private lot or on the parking lot that is then converted to street and would be gifted to council. So if I turn on this again and take that away, you can see this is part of the lot, and there has been a street widening occur at some time. But what you'd want to do, and it's whether that is actually within there or not, there's a couple of interesting lots here. I'm not sure. What you can see there is these lots have actually never been truncated. The footpath on this street is actually running through the lot, not in the street. So what you want to do is to formalize that, and you want to equalize and widen the street. You would want to do that further down later as well. Then what you get is this portion here, which takes in a 6-meter laneway from memory. Let's just double check. And gifts that to council as a public laneway. That would turn white. It becomes part of the street network. Then these are pieces where the back of the car park's been demolished that now need to be integrated as a new edge to the park. And then what you'll see here in 3D is we've done the remaining 4 lots of car park. What you could do is convert the front half, or at least the front 6 meters, to retail on the ground floor. And then you've got housing whittled through with structure, which has roof gardens.
And the existing solar farm?
Oh, that could easily be remade and moved. What you get, solar over time has improved so much in terms of its efficiency that actually, and solar after about 10 or 12 years starts to lose its efficiency. So you'd replace it with a much more efficient new system, and you'd double the power outage output. There's very good recycling for panels now. So that's a minor thing in terms of what you'd be able to reintroduce back onto those. So I'm just going to add an edge to that. So that's the first one. What you want is new laneways and streets to supplement the street network where it is completely unwalkable. That's by snipping off the back of the car park. That lets you then add to your park, and you get a very clear link between these streets. What this option doesn't do is provide a north-south link through. And so then we look at option 2. The idea is with option 2 is that we have a very large library and co-located university faculty building. There would be a public building in a public plaza, which creates a meeting place that doesn't exist in this whole part of Chatswood, but it also links both of these streets straight through. And then you could look at some university housing or affordable housing to go with that. So we'd say university housing. So how might that look? On the big guy here, on the big institutional type levels, you want to give them really big floor plates. So if we look in 3D,
then we'd allocate this to a sort of partial keeping.
No, there's no car park. There's no car park. So the first one is partial. You've snipped off the back only, and you've kept this and reworked. If you keep just the car park, you're only going to get a roof garden. So that could be a first permutation.
Okay.
But if you're wanting to have a little bit more intervention where you actually get an edge to the park and the improved connectivity and walkability, then you'd want to snip off the back.
Okay, on keep.
Yeah, and council was very interested for us to explore this as an option.
Yeah.
So this is a major institution. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't go a bit higher. Maybe you could go to 8 levels. Yep. So really you could have an earlier option than this that keeps all the car park, but you're going to have issues around the back. So that's up to you if you want to keep those. This one I think it's a 3/4 keep. But you could have another one where you keep the lot, but you won't get that laneway at the back, for instance. So you won't get a positive edge to the park.
And do you keep the youth centre?
A youth centre is across the road here. Yep.
Yeah.
You could decide in these ones it does, but you guys can play with that as well if you like. Look, the youth centre in time definitely wants to go. You would have that same street widening along the front. You would get rid of the bridge, and you could put back this type of housing onto there. So the second one puts a large floor plate. It would have probably a beautiful atrium and courtyard, but it's a really institutional type. So it sits there. It's quite large in its own right. And then it could have a paired folly or public pavilion. But what you're seeing here is a square or a plaza which connects the street straight through. So you get that walkability coming through. Then you're looking at what you might be able to do with some student housing. You want to have a really solid ground floor for retail. And so you're adding to the street life and you're activating the plaza. You're then wanting to have housing which is a street-based perimeter block type. And then you might go up with a significant tower. And so in 3D, that starts to look like, we said maybe you go to 6 stories on the street wall. So 6 stories above retail, you would get a communal court at the back both at the ground level and the podium, but the podium will be quite shaded. The ground level will get sun, and you may have bigger roof terraces above the retail for people living on the first floor. But then I'm just going to do a quick duplicate up here. Okay, we're starting to talk about Chatswood scale. This isn't big for what we see in Chatswood, but it's significant.
How tall is that, Ben?
That's 27 stories.
Can you put that in meters? Because they were talking about 90 to 120 meters.
Yeah, so that's right. So 27 times 3.2. I've shown 3 here, but you won't, under the NCC, you won't get a floor level of less than 3.2 anymore. 3.2 times 27 is 86. So look, you could do that. You could even make that 30. Once you're up there, the shadows of tall buildings aren't such a problem if the footprint is thin and oriented more north-south, as we've done. Because what you'll see is the sun will pass in the morning quite quickly and around and pass in the afternoon. If it was a long east-west building, it would create a shadow that is very much a long, slow-moving shadow.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that's why we orient these things north to south.
Yep.
In that vein. So that's the second option. So university, library, pavilion, and student housing with retail. So then the third one is, well, what if council decides to redevelop this, to sell it and redevelop the site? So this is, you know, what we see is the typical sort of bigger mixed use type. And what you would get is a significant amount of retail at the ground floor. What this one's done, though, has extended both streets, but where we don't want to pull traffic through the site, they're both of a plaza or a pocket park nature. So you could decide what that wants to be, and then you will get roof terraces and other things happening as well. So we've got tall ground floors, and then after that, we've got a range of mixed use happening above that. Here, what I've started to show is if you had an office type, what doesn't like one of my shapes. Let's see what's going on there. There we go. Something like that. So typically you retail, you want really high ground floors, and that needs to be lifted up 5. And then office, you typically got 4 meters floor to floor. That's for all of the extra stuff that offices need. And so we said in this case that you might have 3 stories of office, but this is a dedicated office building between the two stories. And I think we decided that the office building on the street here, 18 and 15, is quite tall. So you can start to see by the color and the use, but also by the height of these things, how different these are going to be. So we've already got 3 and we're going to 18. We're going to go up another 15. And we're up to 15, so we're going to go up another 12. So that would be a pair of commercial towers. They don't require the same types of separation that you might see in residential setting. And so that's why you can see they're also a bit of a deeper footprint for an office type. They're quite different in that respect.
Mm.
And then you start to get, so 5, what's 5 plus 12? 17. Okay, and then they should be sitting up on the roof of the office. There we go. And so then what we start to do is then you get these. This is how you're starting. This is what we would call a true mixed use project, in that it has actually, 3 or 4 different key uses actually happening and integrated. They're hybrid buildings. It's something we don't get very often.
And we'd like to really push this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And look, this is dense for many places, but it's not dense for what we've seen in Chatswood. And again, I varied the heights of these to give a bit of play in the skyline, so you actually start to get a bit of interest rather than a monoculture or a flat sort of skyline. You want a little bit of play. So these ones then, again, so 27, 33, and 21. I know I'm going quickly with this, but I've had plenty of practice. But I will be able to give you this file in 3D as well. So, one. Let's go up. Oh, bugger you. There we go. Okay, so we were going to 21, so we need 20 more. And then we were going 27. Duplicate another 6. And then we went to we had 21, so another 12 for a 33. That's starting to demonstrate to you, again, the nice thin north-south envelopes. You will see here what it means when you do a commercial building with a bigger footprint. It will have a much bigger shadow. You'll notice that. But these will get plenty of separation between the towers for light and air. You should get really good, blocks of a couple of hours of sunlight passing through between all of them. So it's interesting. I can show you very quickly with the sun what that means.
Go on.
Like, so if we were to put a Heliodon in here, and we are in Sydney, and that goes to, let's say, 1 p.m. lunchtime. I probably need to also create a ground plane for that. Not going to do the whole of the council area. So if we do that much, and we make that 0.001, there we go. Just make that a millimeter thick. Then when we get back here, and just check we're up to here. Shadows. You can start to see what that means in terms of shadows and in terms of solar access. So what you can see is that the north-south towers that are thin and elegant in their footprint have big shards of sun that come between through the streets and over the courtyards. And so you're going to get big lots of sun, but I can probably also do a little solar animation for you. It'll have a quick think of, hang on. No, so we'll go 21, 6, 9 a.m., 9 a.m., 15-minute interval. Let's see. It should, there we go. It should have a think about that for us. It's not saving it for us. It's not giving me, okay, it's not saving the thing. That's all right. Look, we'll run through that. I'll show you 10 a.m., 11 a.m. So the morning won't get a lot, 12, noon, and then the afternoon, plenty of sun to the south in big arcs. But this is part of what we're dealing with in terms of
Chatswood.
very inner city environments. Yep. And so you're looking for 2 hours of sun in urban areas under the ADG and under what was CEP 65, so studying the Apartment Design Guide. But what you'll find is the thin buildings north to south are what you're wanting.
Okay.
And so that'll let all that pass between. You may decide you want to bring the office tower down, but that's the sort of stuff that we're getting, you know, in Chatswood, and we'll be getting a lot more of. So 3 options. This one could go a little bit higher. This one will have the most difficult solar access of the lot, but it will have 2 plazas and rooftop and courtyard gardens. This one has the institutional building, may have a great rooftop and the public place. This is the one that council was very interested to understand if they could try and entice one of the universities to have a faculty located somewhere close to Chatswood, and you'd need a space and accommodation associated with that. And then this one keeps the car park, but you've got a series of public and private landscape spaces that you can integrate through. So I can send you these layers in 3D as well now that we've got them, if you like.
That would be fantastic. How many people have stepped into using any Vectorworks? No,
I can also send it in DWG.
Is that helpful? Yes. In DWG, yes, please.
Just make sure you're using a proper CAD program. Sometimes every so often a student asks, can I draw in Illustrator? I would say never. Illustrator is not a CAD program. It's a graphics program. You need to be snapping and need to be drawing with exactness to the millimeter. So yes, you could use SketchUp, but SketchUp's again sort of a pseudo CAD program. But I'll provide this to you in DWG and 3D.
Okay.
But you have access to Vectorworks as a student. You have a free license, and it's also in the labs.
Yep, and there's an online. Christina, you've loaded. I saw that. You've loaded up an online.
For Vectorworks,
Vectorworks.
there's a series of online tutorials that about.
Absolutely.
They will be.
There's tutorials on the Moodle site. Yeah, terrific.
Yeah. So Vectorworks, I think, out of all the interfaces, is the most friendly. You wouldn't want to be using Revit or MicroStation for these things. They're quite technical. They're drawing in 3D. They're meant to be coordinating with sub-consultants and others live. They're quite technical. Look, I'd argue ArchiCAD and AutoCAD just aren't as user-friendly as Vectorworks either.
Okay. Good. Any other questions from the room? What we've got there? Do demolished people feel like they've got some good options, and this is recorded, so you've got good information there? Partial people, do you feel okay? There's some good options there. Keep people, how are you feeling?
I'm confused.
So while we're there, like what you could do, it's interesting. What you could do is you could actually keep part of. You could have an institution that was smaller, have a laneway connecting here, an institution here that connected the street, and you could keep the car park just on that very western end, for instance, if you wanted a partial. But the car park, I think you wouldn't want to, that's an option as a base case to keep. Car parks are the least valuable form of urban land use. Right, you're putting private lumps of metal in city centres that sit there empty all day. They do nothing for the city except bring issues around how we get them in and out and where we leave them. So I don't think we should be promoting necessarily many permutations of keeping it. I think if this is a council asset they're looking to leverage and use, at the moment Westfield pays them virtually nothing for this car park.
Yeah.
Councils have very little income stream available to them. Their rates are pegged by state government. If this is an asset that council can leverage, I think we should be really ambitious and be showing them options that council can really start to add to the public domain quality and the activation of the street in Chatswood, because the shopping centre does suck the life out of it.
For sure. Ben, I totally agree. And so we've got 25 students, but a third of them are going to do exactly what you said. And
Yeah, cool.
another third are going to do sort of what you said. And another third are going to do this keep. Because one never knows what happens out there in the real world with Conservative councillors and et cetera, et cetera. So we want to have a good spread of options, so to speak.
Yeah, totally. Look, you could make permutations between these. You've now got forms that are in the appropriate size and location and separation. So now you know the optimal size of an apartment footprint, and you can see how far apart they are from each other. You can see the way street fronting buildings front the street above a podium. So you guys could make permutations of these yourselves.
So suggestions for keep potentially would be able to still add some of those small piano.
Yeah, you're not going to get more than 4 or 6 stories on the roof, because the structure of the car park will have a column structure that's to hold itself up.
Yeah.
For buildings like this, you need to have cores and lobbies and service risers added through. So you would lose a certain number of spots. Then you need a structure to hold the building up above. So you're really not going to get anything more than about 4 or 6 stories, just because it's going to be too big and heavy.
And our focus is the public realm. So
that's exactly right.
It's a sort of outside. I don't mean that to belittle this structure, but I don't want people to get so.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I've tried to give you a range of spaces, either on rooftops, podiums, or public domain and new spaces for you to play with. Mm-hmm. So you should have quite a few different spaces.
Yeah. Just play with is the word. These are options to give you, particularly for demolish and partial, to go. We're just going to do that. We're just going to do what Ben said. And stop
certainly improve on it or show variations. Yep, it's always good to have options and to test. What if I push this a little bit more? For you to make choices and to prove what the best outcome might be.
And we've got quite a lot. We've got focus on what we're calling the green spine, running over to the metro line.
So in each option, it's looking to give you. A new edge to your green spine, so that you can have a positive edge rather than just the back of this horrible car park.
Yep. And Albert Street, would you see that as a 30-kilometre street?
Totally. Look, I think I live on Crown Street in Surrey Hills. The council's pushing everything down to 30. When I'm driving around locally, which is very rare, I don't take my car out very often because my parents live in the countryside. But when I do, I'm not going more than about 30 or 35 on these streets locally anyway. So it's not a big thing for people. Everyone's going, oh my God, we're going to stop the city. It's like, no, actually, it's just the way it already is. So city centres, lots of pedestrians. We know from the data that you're 90% likely to survive a crash at 30 k's an hour, but you're only, I think you're only 60% likely at 40. The difference between survivability of 30 and 40 is drastic. And if we're about living healthily and safely in cities,
Yep, you'd narrow that road dimension, you'd widen that footpath, particularly out on Archer.
Yeah. You'll only need, look, if there's buses, you'll need a 3.2 in the outer lane, but you can have 3-metre lanes for everything else, and 3.2 is the minimum for a bus. And I think you do have buses along there. Yeah, I think you could have 1 lane each way with a median and a turning lane at intersections. I don't think, and then you could probably have parking. So 2.3 metre parking, a 3.2 by a 3.2 metre travel lane, and then you could have a 3 metre median, which could have landscape wooded trees, and then a turning lane for 25 metres either side of each intersection.
Okay.
That would I think there would be no problem proposing something like that in a street like this. Then the remainder is footpaths and landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So they're the minimums to tighten everything down, and then the rest you get back as public domain.
Okay. Any other confusions or questions? All are allowed.
Like for all projects, like those are like we can change those like buildings or like
Yeah, you can change. I mean, in a way, Ben's giving you a language, and
That's
you can,
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, feel free to use it and change it if you want to change it.
like
These are three distinct options. Yeah, but you can find permutations.
Oh, okay. Or the like a functional like buildings or like apartments or like you can change the function. Right?
Yes,
and
yes.
the building forms, right?
Yeah.
Well, what you can see is the forms are tied to their type and function. So you wouldn't put apartments in the big institutional footprint because no one would get any windows, right? Or light it, you know, they're different. So what you've got now is building types. Now you could play with those, but it's also the separation between them. So apartment buildings of this height need at least 24 meters separated. And that's part of the apartment design guide, which is part of SEP 65 or now the new housing SEP. So if you are going to start to propose and change things around, just make sure it doesn't take your time away from your core focus, which is landscape. But if you are wanting to change things around, make sure you are using the apartment design guide to reference that anything you're doing is applicable.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to thank Benjamin. That's all. Thank you. Go on.
So
Thank you, Benjamin.
have a lovely afternoon. Keep
right.
going. Look, I would look, unless you really want to change things. The idea is that this gives you 3 different distinct options. You've got a range of landscape spaces. I would just get stuck into the landscape.
Yeah.
Otherwise, email me if you want to drastically change something, and I can mark it up for you.
Amazing. Super
Yeah.
generous.
Cool.
Benjamin, thanks a lot.
Awesome. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.